and welcome to the Business Talk podcast. I'm your host Deepak. Let's extend a warm welcome to Dr. Jenny Darroch, Dean and Michelle P. Rales Chair in Business Leadership of the Farmer School of Business at Miami University as she joins us on our today's podcast episode. Dr. Jenny is the former Henry Y. Hwang Dean of the Drucker School of Management at Claremont Graduate University and a professor of marketing and entrepreneurship. Her early scholarly work on innovation aligned with the emergence of the National Innovation System in New Zealand. She is a regular contributor to the Huffington Post, where she explores a diverse range of topics, including essential skill sets for recent college graduates, Peter Drucker's 5 key principles, and the influence of the Sustainable Development Goals on business practices. Dr. Jenny is the author of 3 books and has published over 30 peer-reviewed articles. Her research, which centers on innovation strategies from the customer's perspective, has been cited more than 4,600 times in leading journals across marketing, management, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Dr. Jenny has received several prestigious honors, including being named as a Rising Star finalist in the Los Angeles Business Journal's 2014 Women Making a Difference Awards. She was also recognized as Claremont Graduate University's Teacher of the Year for 2010-11 and has received awards from the Academy of Marketing Science and the Product Development and Management Association. In this episode, Dr. Jenny shares valuable insights from her book, Why Marketing to Women Doesn't Work, using market segmentation to understand consumer needs. Kicking off this exciting conversation, let's warmly welcome Dr. Jenny Darroch to the show. It's a real privilege to welcome you, Dr. Jenny. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Dr. Jenny, your book challenges the conventional approach to marketing to women. Could you briefly explain why gender alone isn't a reliable indicator for targeting female consumers?
No, thanks for the question. So, in my opinion, gender is simply a too broad a category to serve as a meaningful marketing differentiator. Women are very diverse across age, life stage, profession, cultures, values, and aspirations. And so when marketers use gender as a primary lens, they're often defaulting to stereotypes that are really just simply outdated, assumptions that are just no longer correct. So instead of trying to create relevance, I think this approach can often alienate audiences that they're trying to engage. So what matters more, in my opinion, is going back to basics and understanding individual motivations, behaviors, and needs. That's where the real connection happens.
You mentioned the importance of market segmentation in understanding consumer needs. What does a more effective market segmentation strategy look like, especially when it comes to reaching female customers?
So for me, effective segmentation has to dig beneath the surface. And what we see a lot of companies do, they stop at demographics, whether it's gender, age, marital status, and they stop there because the data is often readily available. But they forget to look more at behavior or lifestyle or values or unmet needs and go a little bit deeper into understanding who the consumers are. So for example, instead of saying all women aged 20 to 40, what about thinking about other elements of lifestyle? For example, they're busy professionals who might prioritize efficiency, or health-conscious parents who seek sustainable choices for their children. So these groups may include women, but they might also include men, but they're unified by some common challenge or priority, and that's where the message can really resonate. So for me, first figure out that, and then figure out whether gender plays a role.
Dr. Jenny, how do you differentiate between gender-based marketing and human needs-based marketing? Can you share an example of a brand that successfully implemented this shift?
I think it's a really interesting conundrum. And as I say, we often start with one, go to the other, start with the other, go to one. And so for me, it's about making sure we always focus on the need that we're trying to satisfy. And I think if we don't do that, if we just use gender-based marketing, we fall into false assumptions. So we think that women will respond to pink packaging, for example, or softer language, or maybe smaller product or emotional appeals. When human needs-based marketing, on the other hand, starts by understanding first the problem that the consumer is trying to solve. As I was thinking and preparing for the interview, a couple of examples come to mind. One is Gillette, a global brand that we all know and love. But Gillette used to be very much gender-based in its marketing. It used to market to men. It was the best a man could get, if you remember that campaign. Or the Venus product was marketed to women with feminine and feminine designs and features. But more recently, they've changed that to look at things like Gillette Skin Guard, designed for people with sensitive skin. Both men and women have sensitive skin, so why distinguish between sensitive skin based on gender? Or they've got other more inclusive campaigns that they run where they focus on diverse lifestyles and the shaving needs of a more diverse audience. So they look very much at the shaving experience and performance. I was thinking that is a sort of more obvious example. I dug around to try and find other examples. And another one that came to mind was that of Lululemon, the global brand started with women's yoga apparel. So very much was a brand designed for women. And it did well with that. But now they've moved more broadly to people who prioritize comfort, movement, and well-being. So they've been able to broaden their audience by looking more at the needs that we're trying to satisfy.
In the book, you highlight the common pitfalls brands face when they attempt to market to women. What are some of the key mistakes that companies often make when approaching female consumers?
Yeah, so I want to go back and tell a story about why I wrote the book in the first place. So it was back in around, I can't remember the time, it was way back in 2013 when I was doing a lot more of the things you mentioned in the introduction. I was more involved in the Marketing to Women conference. I was doing more consulting and executive education at the Drucker School. I've now moved on to being a dean of 2 business schools. So as you read the introduction, I thought, gosh, I'm not doing as much of those things as I used to. But I remember being called in by a large auto manufacturer. I won't name, there's no need to name. And they asked me, they were struggling with how to market to women. And it made me pause for a minute and really think about what that meant and what I could offer. So I remember vividly sitting at the kitchen table, talking to my husband about how much I dislike buying cars, how I dislike being treated when I walk into a car dealership. And every time I would say something, he would actually say, but why do you think that's a gender issue? Because I feel like that too. So for me, that was the beginning of this moment of trying to figure out how to market to women. And if I stay with the car example, car dealerships have struggled because we know that 85% of all purchase decisions are influenced by women. And when we buy cars still, to this day, the woman might have made her decision about what to buy, but the man might do the negotiating or the salesperson talks to the man. And I still mutter away and mumble away when I end up in that sort of scenario. So I say it because we're still trying to we struggle with it in brands in general. But staying with why I wrote the book, so going back in time, and I've always worked, and I'm grateful for the career I've had. I've raised 2 beautiful children who I don't think have been neglected. They might think otherwise, but I don't think so. And every time I would see ads on television, marketing to women, I would see a lot of women who were at home. And as profiled in the ads, and I would see beautifully kept homes and lunches made for their children that were just so creative and wonderful and beautiful. And I'm looking at these and thinking, have I made a mistake? Am I doing right? Am I doing well? And I say that because I kept saying to myself that these brands don't understand me. They don't understand me. And it comes back to this issue of women. We're half the population, but we're not all alike. So I felt there were a lot of cliches that companies were using. They didn't quite understand how to market to women. And as I dug in and wrote the book, I think one of the things I found, and I think it's true of all people, we have different identities. So sometimes I am the mother and looking after I'm a grandmother now, but I am raising my children. Other times I'm a professional woman I'm a CEO running a business school, a nationally ranked business school. But I think that the challenge brands have, they don't know where to meet me sometimes, so they fall into cliches and stereotypes. So my point really is you can't just put a female face to a campaign and show a woman in action doing whatever she's doing and hope to make a connection. You've got to make sure that you're not using outdated assumptions about her. Women want to be understood. I think that's the most important message here. We need to be understood. We don't want to be pandered to.
How does focusing on human needs instead of gender-specific marketing improve customer loyalty and engagement?
I think, at the end of the day, we all struggle as brand managers to engage customers and create loyalty. That's the ultimate end point, isn't it? As loyalty, however defined, whether it's a deep feeling of connection or just simply repeat purchase. But I think, when we understand truly what customers need and want, we are giving them the sense that they've been seen and they're understood, that we get them, we understood where they're at in their life. And that emotional resonance, I think, to me is really powerful. It encourages trust, builds loyalty, and it leads to more word of mouth and stronger long-term relationships because we get you, we understand you, we see you, we understand who you are. So people are more likely to engage with a brand that does speak to their reality, not just their demographic profile. It shows the brand truly understands them.
Could you talk about how businesses can better understand and measure the diverse needs of female customers across different demographics?
I think as a business brand owner, we have to be willing to be curious and to challenge assumptions that we might hold. And we do need to use a mix of data. And you know, I don't teach marketing research anymore, but I do have the view that marketing research is wrought with problems. And when we do surveys, and you know, increasingly we see people do online surveys and be happy when they've got 1,000 responses or click through purchase patterns. There's a lot more, you know, digital information than when way back in the day when I was, a young brand manager. But I think we need to be really willing to get out and look at the market and truly understand what they're doing and be curious about what we see and to challenge it. And again, it comes back to what I was saying before, that we need to firstly understand what problem it is that our customers are trying to solve for, and don't just fall into the easy trap of segmenting by age or gender or income, because that data often is more readily available than anything else that might be more complicated.
Professor, how does cultural, social, and economic context play a role in shaping women's purchasing behavior? And how can brands adapt to their marketing strategies accordingly?
I think it was, I was, it was such a good question. As I was preparing for the interview, it stopped me. Again, I don't teach marketing anymore. I run a business school. But when I always remember thinking about whether, what is the role of marketing communications? Is it there to reflect society today, or is it there to drive change in society? So I thought about that a lot. And I think, I thought back to the Dove beauty campaign, where Dove, I'll give them credit for changing the narrative around beauty and how we define beauty. It didn't have to be a super thin model. It could be someone, they use multiple different images of women. It was just such a wonderful campaign. And then I was thinking back to my own, growth path as a woman. And the reason I'm raising this is that the way women feel and show up changes. So when I started my corporate career, it was 1985. And that was in the day that women had shoulder pads and jackets. And I never understood why we had shoulder pads and jackets. And someone told me it was so that we looked more masculine, that we looked bigger and broader in shoulder. And then I was relaying that story to a friend of mine who was just a tiny bit older than me, not much. And she started her career in a bank, a big bank, and she was told to lower her voice so she sounded more like a man. I thought, that's really interesting. So I say that because in my generation, we were told to blend in a little bit more. And so when I started to see product that was pink, for example, like the Black & Decker drill, or Bic came out with a range of products for women, I didn't see the relevance of that. I couldn't understand why we would do that when we'd been conditioned as women to try and blend in. And then I think of Barbie as a movie, and I think to me that's also very interesting, because Barbie is all I think of with Barbie is pink and beautifully curated scenes. And I'm watching that again, driving perhaps changes in women and how they see themselves. And a lot more people wear pink and are proud to own things that are pink now. So I say that because intentionally, because I don't think we can say that culture stands still, or our assumptions about how women want to be treated stand still. And I think that makes it quite difficult. So if I was to summarize what I'm saying, there are cultural and social expectations in an economic context that does deeply influence what we do and matters to consumers a lot, from what we choose to the messages that resonates with us. And it changes in time. For me as one person living in different countries, and it's changed for me over my lifetime. But even if we look around the world regionally, women might prioritize things differently across countries or within communities within countries. There'll be, some countries are known to be more individualistic, some more collective, some more role defined. So I think brands that succeed in general, to me, are brands that do embrace and do take time to understand the cultural context, the local realities, and adapt accordingly. And I think you've got to be good listeners. You've got to get out in the market, conduct ethnographic studies, ask questions of why, truly understand, be flexible, and have a global mindset about what it is you're trying to do, but understand the local relevance of the activities you're undertaking.
Your approach to marketing emphasizes empathy and understanding. How can marketers truly listen to and understand the needs of female customers beyond stereotypes?
Yeah, so I think your empathy is really important. So I think for me it starts by going beyond surveys. So very similar to what I said earlier. I think it's very easy to feel that we've surveyed 1,000 people online, we've got our answers, click, 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 or we've watched your purchase behavior and we get it. I remember when I started in marketing, I was probably a bit weird, but I was working in fast-moving consumer goods for a British company, Reckitt and Coleman at that time. It's called Reckitt's now. And I would go to the supermarket on a Saturday morning and just hang around the aisles and lurk at watch people buy. And it was just fascinating to me because as marketers, we spend so much time immersed in our brand category and thinking about our brand we're paid to think about our brand 24/7. And for a lot of us, that's not what consumers do. They don't spend that kind of time thinking about our brand and the needs it's satisfying. So I think for me, that early lesson was even, spending time watching customers. I remember early on running focus groups behind one-way glass and just being deeply fascinated and somewhat, I'm not saying depressed, but grounded. I think that's a good word. At just how consumers truly see the brands that we spend so much time marketing, and we think we have a whole range of product to suit every need, but the consumers and the experiences I had were really confused. So just being willing to get out there in the market, ask questions. Think about what it is they're trying to do, what do they love about what they're doing, what frustrates them, ultimately what problem are they trying to solve, how can our product solve their product easier than anything else that's on the market. And equally, if you hear something you don't agree with, challenge the assumption. Don't just say, well, just brush it off. Even if it's one data point, like what is it telling you? And is it telling you something about maybe a shift in the market that you need to go and identify? So for me, it's taking the time, developing these deep, rich insights about customers, challenging assumptions, and just being really empathetic and trying to understand the needs that they have.
Dr. Jenny, my last question. As the marketplace continue to evolve, how do you see the future of gender-neutral marketing shaping the way brands connect with consumers, not just women, but all audiences?
I think it's a really good period of time I love the question. So when I think about it, I'll answer the question specifically in a minute, but I was thinking about marketing to women more recently, and again, I wrote the book quite a while ago, but it's still really topical and things change. I always think about it. There was a really famous study called Marketing Across Cultures by Gert Hofstadter back in, I think it was 1970 or something like that. But he used to talk about masculine and feminine and anchored a continuum masculine and feminine. And I thought that's actually really interesting because a lot of the time, and when we look at ourselves and we look at how do we improve ourselves and how do we show up differently, we're encouraging people, not necessarily men, but people, to develop more feminine traits, to be more empathetic, to be more relational, and so forth. And equally, which encouraging women to embrace more traits that might have traditionally be seen as masculine. So to me, that's really an interesting point of view. It's not male or female; it's masculine, feminine, and maybe the point is that all of us might meet somewhere in the middle, and that's an interesting point of view. But to answer your question more specifically, I think we are in a far more fluid, far more inclusive era of marketing, where relevance to brands, it supersedes, it trumps demographics. I think that's really important. And I think consumers, especially younger generations, they don't want to be pigeonholed. And in fact, when you go back to traditional marketing research questions that I was trained to do, even things of lifestyle, you're single, you get married, then you have children, the children leave, then you have grandchildren, someone dies, the other one, and you're done. And that's not how lives work, and that's not how households look anymore. So I think these traditional notions about labeling people using traditional assumptions are just not the way we should think about our consumers. We need to think of whole people who have individual needs, individual values, individual identities. So to me, gender neutral marketing doesn't mean erasing identity at all. It just means being flexible and designing for personal relevance. So I think for me, as I wrap up, I think the brands that succeed will be the ones that lead with empathy, not with assumption.
Listeners, it has been an absolute privilege to host Dr. Jenny Darroch on today's episode. Her deep expertise in marketing, innovation, and leadership, combined with her global academic journey and impactful contributions to business thought, offer valuable lessons for both scholars and practitioners alike. Her insights on gender-based market segmentation, drawn from her book, Why Marketing to Women Doesn't Work, challenge conventional thinking and inspire more inclusive, customer-centric strategies. We thank Dr. Darroch for sharing her time, experience, and wisdom with us today. Thank you so much, Dr. Jenny Darroch, for being joining us today.
It's been my pleasure. Such a good interview. Thank you so much.
Thank you.